Hey everybody, it's Tom with TKI. This afternoon I am in the shop and we're going to review some of the issues that we've seen on the Timbersled. As a lot of you have seen, we have done kind of an update on our Facebook page and Instagram about some of the issues that we've been seeing with the belt wanting to walk off the outside of the gears. We just wanted to touch base with you on that and show you what exactly is going on. What we are finding is the shaft, the lower shaft and the upper shaft from Polaris are not square and not parallel. So we are going to go over today how we are loosening the bolts. In some cases you actually have to loosen all of the bolts that hold the side plate on because the kit is so far out of square that you kind of have to bring everything back together, and we'll kind of give you an update or show you how to do that. On our belt drive system, all of our top and bottom gears will now come with a flange. That flange will easily be able to be removed, so it looks like almost like a little top hat that will slide into the top gear, and the bottom gear, the bolt will go through it and thread right back into the shaft. So if you ever have to change a belt, I know that was a complaint that we had on some of our early gears, that the flanges were fixed. Now they're not. You still have to remove the bolt that holds the gear on, but we're just trying to make it easier and simpler for everyone. A couple little points that we have also noticed on this bike versus the bikes that we originally tested with, and I don't know, hopefully Jen can zoom in, but on this upper bolt we have noticed that the heads of the bolts used to be flat and now they have this cup, and the clearance that I have cut in the back side of the case here for this bolt, the head or this cup is actually hitting on that counterbore. So that's actually keeping this kit not quite flat on this case. It was something that we just noticed, and then going back and looking at some of the other kits that we had originally tested and set the case up with, the heads of these bolts were flat. So you may need to take and lightly grind down that cup on the inside of this just so it's flush with the head of the bolt, but we will be making that adjustment to the case. It's one of those that Polaris or Timbersled may have changed vendors, so that's why that changed and we did not see it, and this is a brand new 21 kit. So we're going to show you where the movement is coming from and the misalignment is coming from, but we'll get you some closer video and some closer pictures to show you what's going on. Alright, so first off, the way that we're going to start is I went ahead and removed our belt drive system and the case from the side of the bike. We are going to use the bottom gear and the top gear to help align and get them back square with a straight edge, but I wanted to take that off, one, so you guys could see what was going on, and two, how to fix it before we go to put our kit back on. So as you can see, if you can see that I have this shaft, I took the bolt out on the brake rotor side. So I took that bolt, that washer, the spacer, and the rotor out, so that way you can see it easily spins. If you watch, you can see how the shaft easily slides in and out. When we originally took this out, the shaft, we actually had to pound it out the other way because the shaft was so out of alignment. But if you're wondering where this misalignment comes from, if you loosen the bolts, you can actually see how much movement that this bearing housing to the outside case, and then also there's a bearing housing that holds the bearing that ties in with the main frame. There's almost 15 thousandths of movement back there, and then we have all this movement back out here. So if you would take all those tolerances and stack them one way or the other, we're getting almost 90 thousandths of movement, which obviously it doesn't take a whole lot to realize that's why we've got misalignment, or why the belt was wanting to ride off the top and the bottom gear. So the way that we're going to fix this, and I've got this stuff pulled apart so that you can see obviously how much this is moving. The other thing we noticed also is the wear that is on this shaft. As you can see, the shaft is not even hitting on this side, and then it comes around and you can see this witness line. That witness line is from the inner race of the bearing, and when we look in here at the bearing has actually got wear on the inner race. Alright, so you can see on the shaft that on this side it's got some weird wear marks, and then you can see exactly that line there is where the bearing race is, and when you drag your finger across it you can actually feel a step where that bearing, because of the misalignment, has already started to wear this shaft out. And then it's really hard to see, but if you could see the inside race of this bearing, it's actually worn as well, where there's a little bit of galling that's going on. But like I said, we wanted to do this to show everybody what's going on. And it doesn't matter if you have our belt drive system or not. I think this is almost a must for everybody to do, even if you're running the chain and the sprockets. So again, what I did is I took our entire belt system off. I did put the bottom gear back on in order to use that along with the straight edge to align the top gear. But as you can see, you have to come in the back side, and there's 4 13mm bolts. So we loosen those, and then we also loosen the 4 13mm bolts that hold the brake caliper and this bearing housing onto the main framework of the bike. So as you can see, if you push the shaft one way and you go to slide it into the bearing, it stops and it hits and it starts to bind. Where if you start pushing this shaft around, you can still feel it hit because it's misaligning. And if you actually just start moving the shaft, you can actually find a spot where the shaft will slide through both bearings with little or no force. So once it's at that point, I'll actually take my 13mm and I'll start snugging up the bolts, and I'll constantly use that shaft to gauge whether or not those bearings are lined up. It's not a perfect way, but it's the only way that we're finding that is going to work. So we're going to get it to that point, then we're going to put the rotor back on, the spacers and the bolt, and then we'll bolt our top gear on. And while those bolts are just slightly snug, then we're going to use our straight edge to go from the bottom gear to the top gear. Alright, so as you can see, I've got the top gear and the brake rotor, the spacers, and the top bolt back on. I actually used the brake rotor and caliper to hold the shaft while I Loctited and torqued the top bolt on this shaft to 40 foot-pounds. So now we just snugged up this top bolt so that I can put the straight edge across the top and the bottom gear. So we're going to take our straight edge. Most people probably won't have an actual good stare at one, but if you find a really good piece of material, or if you have to borrow one of these, there's a lot of people that have them, but they do work really well. So if you put it across the top and the bottom gear, it's going to show you your misalignment. But keep in mind that this gear and this gear may be offset from one another. So I would check it from the bottom gear to the top, and then the top gear to the bottom. And on this bike, we actually have an offset. So if we put it across the bottom gear to the top, it wants to hit on the top gear. So and it barely hits. But if we go from the top to the bottom, it clears the bottom, but it's a 15 thousandths offset from this to both lips of, you know, across. So if we put it across here, it's 15 thousandths here and there, which tells us that the shaft is now square. Yes, it's offset, but the flanges will help with that offset. We're not going to necessarily be able to move this shaft back and forth. If you really want to be OCD about it, you could take a little bit off the back side of the gear to move the gear in. But for 15 thousandths, I would not worry about it. If you're in that 1/16 of an inch to 100 thousandths to an 1/8 of an inch, then we definitely need to look at the chassis to make sure something is not bent, or the gears aren't offset way more than what they should be. So as of right now, I'm happy where this is at. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten up the 4 bolts that hold the caliper and the brake rotor, and also the 4 bolts that hold the bearing housing to the outside plate. All right, as you can see on this bolt, we went ahead and ground off that outer lip of that bolt. Like I said, this is just on existing kits. On all of our new belt drive systems that we'll have out, we'll actually make it deeper, so that if, you know, Polaris would change vendors again or something like that, that we would not have to worry about that. That is something I did miss on the first design, but these heads of these bolts were not the same on the older kits as they were on the newer ones. So as you can see, we have the top and bottom bolts, or top and bottom gears removed. We're going to go ahead and put the case back on, and we're going to Loctite those bolts and get everything tight again. All right, as you can see, now we're going to go ahead and reinstall our top and bottom gears. You can see this is a silver flange, and we're only doing it today to show you the difference between the two, but these will come back, these will come black. With every kit that we've already sold, we are going to replace or include these flanges for everyone. So we'll be getting with each other, we'll be getting with everybody this week in order to make sure that you have the new updated kit. But when we update this, we highly, highly recommend that you take everything off like we just did, help realign that top shaft, because every one that we have seen is misaligned pretty bad. So it will definitely help with the life of the belt. You know, we built our stuff accurately, but we did not realize that the shafts were that far out. So with that, the shaft goes right into the top gear. You can put that one on, grab your top one, and we'll have to install. It's easier to install the belt now. So we're going to go ahead and put the belt in the case. And then we'll put this top gear on. And you may have to rotate the track a little bit to get the splines to line up. Then you can put your flanges on, put your Loctite on your bolts, And again, when we put the Loctite on the bolts, as you can see, I put it down the length of the threads. Don't just put a drop on the end. So we have to make sure that these coat. We've had some guys complain that their bolts are coming loose. 9 times out of 10, it just means that they did not get enough Loctite on the threads. So that's why I coat the threads really good before we install it and torque the bolts. All right, so now that we have our flanges installed, we can push our tensioner. Again, this is a little 10mm nut in here. I like to take it and push it to take the majority of the slack out, and then just snug it. And then we're going to install our tensioner bolt, press the tensioner, and then we'll show you how to gauge the movement on the belt. All right, so we got our tensioner bolt put in. We have not tightened down the jam nut, so we are going to adjust this. We've had a lot of people ask about belt tension. I tell everybody, especially on the Timbersled kits, we don't have the thermal expansion like what we do on the snowmobiles. So if you take one index finger and push the center of the belt out, you want it to move maybe 1/8 of an inch. So we've got a little bit more than that. So we're going to just tighten it up a little bit more. And I think that's going to be good there. So we'll just go ahead and tighten the jam nut. And then we'll also tighten the little 10mm nut that's on the inside of the case. The other question that we get a lot is, as you can see, the inside of this case, this is a used belt. The inside of the case, the belt does put off a blue dust. So that dust comes from obviously the blue side of the belt, but what it is a braking compound. So Gates puts that on every one of the belts. The belt and the gears have to get up to a certain temperature before that braking compound releases. And what it's intended for is on steel gears, that dust will come off and embed into the face or the surface of the steel gear. Being that we use a hard anodized smooth aluminum gear, that dust really doesn't have anywhere to go, so it just kind of comes off and creates a mess. So the first time you open this case and you see all this blue dust, don't panic. It does not mean that you've got something, you know, it's not ruining a belt. It's just the whole fact that that braking compound is coming off. The way that I do it is it takes such little time to just remove the case. If you want, you can use an air hose to clean it out. You can use some simple green to clean it out, or you can use some brake cleaner and kind of wash everything out and then blow it out with the air gun. And now everything is nice and clean. The braking compound will only do it once. If you do open the case and you see either strings or a rubbery buildup, then yes, you have something else going on. But again, just want to give everybody a heads up on the blue dust. We do get a lot of questions about that, and just kind of wanted to answer some of those questions. Now that we have the top and the bottom bolts on, we're going to torque the top and bottom bolt to 40 foot-pounds, and then we can reinstall our cover and we're ready to get back out on the snow. All right, hopefully this video has kind of helped you with some questions that you guys have had between blue dust, belt tension, also the couple little things that we've seen, along with how to realign that top shaft. And I just want to reaffirm everybody, we are standing 100% behind our product. So if you have a gear that looks like that is just the standard gear, we are going to send you 2 new flanges. If you had any problems with belts, gears, anything, we're going to send you all new parts. But we want you to realign the shafts, because we don't want our products to fail because of misalignment here. So again, we're asking everybody to kind of help us out with that side of it, because I can't come to your shop and do it for you, even though I'm sure a lot of you would love it if I did. But I don't get much stuff done in my shop the way that it is. So again, if you have a gear like this, we are going to send you 2 new flanges that are going to fit right into the gear. Bolt will go through and it will bolt on. It'll keep the belts from riding off the top and bottom gear, even if there is a slight misalignment. If everybody can let us know, obviously email us at sales@tkicnc.com or give us a call at the shop, 406-534-3478. Again, we stand behind it. We are going to take care of our customers, and we're going to make sure this works. Again, thank you for your time, and hopefully everybody's getting some snow to enjoy. Thank you.